All right, guys, here's some support on question number 7. So the question says Arturo launches a rocket from a platform. The height of the rocket in feet is given by this equation right here, where t represents the time in seconds after launch. What is the rocket's greatest height? All right. So when you're doing this, we can actually represent it using visuals. So Arturo launches a rocket from a platform. So Arturo is here on a platform. All right, and Arturo launches that rocket. Okay. So if he launches the rocket, it'll go up a little bit, but at some point it is going to have to go all the way down to the ground. All right. So essentially, I want to find what this greatest height is. Okay. For me to find that greatest height, guys, I need to first find the time that it takes me to get to that greatest height. So to find the time that takes you to get to your greatest height, you need to use a formula. X is equal to negative b over 2a. All right. So that's how you find the time. Okay. To find the height, okay, you're going to have to plug them back in to your equation. The result you get for here, you're going to have to replace for the t, because that t represents time, in your equation to find that height. Okay. So again, guys, that is how we would find that height after you find time. Okay. So again, that's how you find height. Okay. So here I would have negative 1 parentheses over 2 parentheses, because in front of this b is technically a negative 1. All right. I plug in my b, which is 32. Plug in my a, which is negative 16. Negative 1 times 32 is negative 32. 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. Negative 32 divided by negative 32 is positive 1. So now I'm going to plug in positive 1 inside of my parentheses. Okay. 1 squared is 1. 1 times negative 16, negative 16. 32 times 1 is 32. And then I bring down the 128. All right. Negative 16 plus 32 is positive 16. And positive 16 plus 128 is 144. All right. So again, that greatest height would be 144. And you could have used your calculator to do the exact same things that I just did. All right. So you could have clicked the calculator. All right. And did fraction negative 1 parentheses over 2 parentheses. All right. Plug in your b, which is 32. Plug in your a, which is negative 16. All right. You'd have gotten 1. Then retype your equation negative 16 parentheses squared plus 32 parentheses plus 128, and then plug in your positive 1 inside of each, and that's how you could also get 144. All right. So again, guys, just like that. All right. So again, just like that. Okay. So again, guys, that same setup will help you for all problems, but you just need to figure out what the question is asking you to do. All right. So let's look at another problem. All right. So when I look at this other problem, guys, we're going to do the exact same thing, guys. All right. But first, let's read the problem before we assume that. So it says a rocket is launched in the air. All right. Its height in feet is given by this equation, where t represents the time in seconds after launch. How many seconds have gone by when the rocket is at its highest point? Okay. So because you're trying to find how many seconds, all right, how many seconds would represent time, all right? And what formula do you use for time? Yup, you use the formula x equal negative b over 2a. All right. You only plug it back in when you're trying to find height. All right. I know it said highest point, but it says how many seconds. All right. So because it's asking you how many seconds takes you to get to the highest point, it's asking you for time. All right. So negative 1 parentheses over 2 parentheses. Your b is 112. Your a is negative 16. Negative 1 times 112 is negative 112. And 2 times negative 16 is negative 32. And I believe that negative 112 divided by negative 32 is 4. All right. I believe. But again, you can use your calculator to validate if this is correct. All right. So again, you write your fraction, negative 1 parentheses over 2 parentheses. All right. Because you're using that same negative b over 2a. your B is 112, and your A is negative 16. Oh, so I actually was a little off. It was actually 3.5. So I'm glad that we used our calculator so that we did not possibly get this wrong. All right. So again, guys, there's no problem with depending on your calculator for a question that looks like this. Okay. So looking at the next question, guys. All right. This one is asking you for both the time and the height. So I need to do both. Okay. So for this one, guys, I'm going to use my calculator a little bit for this one. All right. So I would first define time because again, this T represents that time. Okay. So I need to find the time it takes me to get to my vertex, and your vertex is your highest point or your lowest point. All right. Because again, if you remember, the vertex of a parabola is either an N or a U shape. So the vertex is where all points meet at either the top or at the bottom. When they meet at the top, it's called a maximum vertex. When they meet at the bottom, it's called a minimum vertex. All right. This equation is talking about a maximum. All right. The reason I know that it talks about a maximum is because the negative number in front, that negative LC or leading coefficient, all right. So that negative leading coefficient, all right, means that your graph is facing downwards. All right. So that means it has a maximum vertex. Okay. So let's find what that maximum vertex is by first defining the time using negative b over 2a. So I have negative 1 parentheses over 2 parentheses. Okay. Your b is 136. Your a is negative 16. And I got 4.25. So 4.25. That would represent how long, because time is how long. And I'll be at my peak because the top of that mountain or the top of that vertex is your peak. All right. So what you just calculated, guys, was the time, all right, or the axis of symmetry for where it crosses it in and cutting this in half. All right. So that's what we just found. How much time it takes me to get to right here. All right. So now I need to find what the height is by plugging this back into my equation. So I'll write negative 16 parentheses squared plus 136 parentheses, and what do you think is going to go inside? Yep, the 425, or the 4.25, I mean. So plug in 4.25, you get 289. So this would be 289, and then that would represent the height because h is height, and you're still talking about the peak. All right, these will always be talking about the peak. All right. So next question, guys. Next question. All right. So for the next question, guys, it asks us the same thing. So I'm going to use my calculator quite closely for this one. All right. So again, I use fraction, negative 1 parentheses over 2 parentheses. Your b is 104. Your a is negative 16. We got 3.25. So in here I put 3.25. And that represents t, which is time or how long at its peak. Then I retype my equation, okay, and then I replace all the inside of those parentheses, or I replace those t's with 3.25. So I replace them with 3.25. All right, and I get 169, okay, which represents the height. Yep, represents the height at its peak. All right, so let's do one more question, guys. So this one says how many seconds? Seconds is what, guys? Seconds is time. All right, so because it says how many seconds, we're trying to find time. We're not trying to find height. So again, I'm not finding greatest height. I'm finding seconds it takes me to get to the greatest height. So do I need to plug it back into my equation? No. All I have to do is negative b over 2a, which you can write as negative 1 parentheses. Your b is 48. And your a is negative 16. And I get 1.5. All right. So again, guys, just like that. All right. So again, those are all the variations that you will see.